want to thank you for being here. It's wonderful that you're here to join us today. I just wanted to start with a couple questions, and we'll do a Q&A with the audience. My first question, I always love a good origin story, a good backstory, just to get to know you a little bit. I was curious how you got into wrestling in the first place, if you were a wrestler in high school, you were into athletics in high school, or if it was more of like the entertainment side that kind of got you into it.
I was a basketball player in high school. I didn't play football. And I didn't play football because my mom and dad went and signed the release forms. Back then, I don't know if it's like that anymore, but back then you had to have both parents sign a release form for you to play football.
In case you got injured?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't sign it, so I played basketball. And I excelled in basketball in 1979. It shows my age. I graduated high school, and I was Northern California Basketball Player of the Year. I got a scholarship to a place called St. Mary's College in Rogers. I wanted to just stay close to California there. And I always wanted to play football. And so when I got to college, maybe 6'5", 190, 200 pounds.
Sounds about right.
Weights. When I played basketball in high school, you weren't allowed to lift weights. Now they do, but back then it was like, no, you're gonna get too muscle and stuff like that. So I started lifting weights, and I really took to it. And I went from 200 pounds, and that year I played basketball, my freshman year, I went from 200 pounds to 260. And I went from benching 135 pounds to 400 pounds. I was in the gym every day. My body loved it. And I was like, I love this. And I started hanging out with football players. Well, the football coach from St. Mary's went to UNR, University of Nevada, Reno. And he's like, hey, I got this kid who never played football, but he can do this, he can dunk a basketball, he's a high jumper, he's a really good athlete. So they gave me a full ride scholarship to UNR. Never, ever have played tackle football. I played flag football, not tackle. So I literally, when I got there, I didn't know how to put on the shoulder pads. I didn't know how to put on anything. And I played a couple years there, and then I got my knee blown out real bad. Like my mom and dad said I would. And things changed at that point. There are kids here, right? I started working in strip clubs. I started bodyguarding for strippers. I got a tattoo.
You use your strength for other
I got
aspects.
this first tattoo is a bear right here on my arm. I got the bear tattoo. I bought a Harley, and I kind of fell into that lifestyle.
So you were very athletic. Because the football wasn't quite right for you, but you knew you.
No, football was right.
You liked it. You loved it.
If I would have played football for when I was in high school, I can guarantee you I would have been a pro.
Oh wow, yeah.
Because I went from third team to first team, not knowing anything.
That quick.
But I had good hands and good feet.
Yeah, you had that
strong.
coordination and that strength. Yeah.
And so I wish I would have played football in high school. So then, I packed up. Well, I was in, Nevada, so now it's 84, and I start working in clubs out there. And then around in 80, I'm gonna say 6, they were filming a movie with Sylvester Stallone called Over the Top. It was an arm wrestling movie. Remember that?
I do remember that. I can picture that scene.
The club that I worked at was right down the street from the MGM. And then all the guys, and Scott Norton was in that movie. There was a lot of wrestlers that were in that movie, but they were extras. And they would come in and see me, and I'm like, I'm not big like I was then. I mean, I'm 61 years old now. Back then, I'm powerlifting, I'm big.
So you stood out.
Yeah, and they were like, dude, I was the only black guy with tattoos. I really stood out.
That's awesome.
Back then, tattoos weren't cool.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Now
They're not
cool.
what they are now, yeah.
Back in early 80s, they weren't cool. Only prisoners and sailors had tattoos, and bikers. And so they're like, dude, you want to do this wrestling? And I swear I told them this. I'm like, I don't want to do that phony ass wrestling. That's what I said. What I watched when I was young, roller derby. Roller derby in the Bay Area was much bigger.
That's tough stuff too.
Roller derby was much bigger than wrestling, much bigger. They'd be at the Cow Palace, wrestling would draw half a house, roller derby would sell it out. And so we'd go watch roller derby. So I knew who Rocky Johnson was, Haystack Calhoun, Ray the Crippler Stevens, people like that. I kind of knew who they were. And so I'm like, nah, I don't want to do this wrestling stuff. And they're like, well, you're here, Bam Bam Bigelow? And I'm like, yeah, the dude with the tattoos all over his head. He said, well, he made $1 million last year. And I went, what?
I like wrestling.
I'm like, what? He made $1 million wrestling? So I made a call to Bam Bam Bigelow's trained at a place called the Monster Factory in Paulsboro, New Jersey. I called very sharp. And back then, there's no cell phones, laptops, so there's none of that stuff back then. So I couldn't just send him a snap picture of me. He's like, well, come on out here. If you fly yourself out here, we'll put you up. We'll see what you got. As soon as I got off the plane and he seen these, I just went, okay. So most people go to wrestling school maybe 6 months to a year to learn their trade. I kid you not, I'm in wrestling school maybe 2 months, and half the time I'm hanging out in bars and drinking and chasing women. That's just how I was. Not that that's the best thing to be, but that's how I was back then. And so Jerry the King Lawler, he hears about me. So he comes out and they put me in the ring and I'm kind of messing around with him. And mind you, I know how to lock up and I knew how to do a drop down toe hold. Probably because I just happened to be there that day. They were working on drop down toe holds. But that's all I knew. That's all I knew. So Jerry Lawler's like, that's okay. He goes, let me see. He got in the ring with Jerry. He goes, I can work with you. So my very first match ever with no training, and not really know, I thought it was real. I mean, I was hitting people like for real. And so I beat Jerry Lawler in Memphis, Tennessee. I was with a gimmick, I do fire or something on it. But I beat him 1, 2, 3, my very first match ever. So we did about a 2-3 month program where he finally beats me and gets the belt back and all that stuff. So now they don't know what to do because I'm getting through these matches because Jerry's telling me what to do. Jerry's like, listen to me, kid. Put your chest up. Throw me in the corner. You're selling too much. No, stop that. Throw me in. Suplex. He would tell me what to do. Pick me up. I was just doing what he told me to do. And so now, after him, okay, now you're not working with wrestlers that as polished as Jerry. So they're like, well, we got to bring somebody. I was so big again. We got to bring somebody in bigger than you. They're like, we got this redheaded kid in Texas that's been in the business a little bit longer than you, and I think he can lead you through a match. His name's Mark Calaway. He wrestles as Master of Pain. Okay. And for you that don't know, that's the Undertaker now. And so Taker tells a story about it, how the match went. It was horrible. And I'm a biker. So the big white dudes that I'm used to dealing with, they're a little racist and stuff. And I'm the type of guy that takes not that much guff. Not even, you just look at me wrong and I hit you. So I see this big redheaded kid and I'm like, well, you don't have no tattoos. So all right. So we get in there and we go at it, man. I'm just lacing him and I'm lacing him and I'm lacing him. I throw him across the ring, he hits the turnbuckle. He'll tell the story. The top turnbuckle explodes. All right? I get on him again, and then I go and I try to shoot him back into that turnbuckle, not even thinking, the turnbuckle's not even there, it's just some steel. Right? So he stops me, throws me outside, gets a chair, hits me over the head with this chair so hard that I swear like a cartoon when you see stars. And I look up at him, he goes, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. Which one do you want to do? And I said, I think I'll go the easy route. And after that, for some reason they decided to make us a tag team and we were called Death Express. And from that time, that's like 1988 till this day, he's not my friend, he's my brother, man. He's a brother to me.
And all that experience, how you said you in the very beginning, you were like, I don't want to do this big stuff. All that early experience, when did that sort of change your mind? Where you kind of felt like you started to get into it and you're like, all right, this is cool. This is something I want to do.
Oh, well, when I actually got in the ring with Jerry Lawler in front of those people, and I was a natural. People always said I've always been an
that natural talent, yeah.
I've always been someone that didn't mind talking in front of people, someone that didn't mind being in front of the camera or making yourself look stupid or whatever. I didn't care.
Because it's hard to do something just because you get paid well.
Yeah.
You want to enjoy it too. So I'm sure you're scared, like, yeah, I'm going to get paid well, but I at least want to like it. But you got to that point where you got that experience, you're like, okay, this is fun, I am going to enjoy this?
The reason why I have 5 characters in the WWEF. I have Papa Shango, Kama Mustafa, Godfather, and Goodfather, and the Nation of Domination, RTC. And I was also in a group with Ted DiBiase called Money Incorporated, where we fought the football players, Lawrence Taylor, remember that? I was in that. And so why I would come and go is because for me, it wasn't about the money. At that point, I was part owner of a topless club in Vegas called Cheetahs. And we sold it. I ended up owning a lot more of it, but we sold it 4 years ago, just before COVID hit. So for me, it was having fun.
Yeah.
And the money was great.
You can tell you're having fun.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
The money was great, but the money wasn't everything because I was making money from the club. So I could survive without wrestling. I could survive well with it. You know, money's good, but this money's good too. And I'm making even more because now I'm at home making more. And so when I wasn't having fun, that's why you'd see me disappear. And I would go to Vince and say, Vince, I'm not having fun. Now I'm going through tables, getting hit over the head with cheers, and I'm like, this ain't no fun no more. I could sit at home and make money and not get hit over. I mean, you know, you try wrestling the Dudley Boys for a month straight, going through a table for 30 days in a row, or this one lacing you with a cheer, or this 500-pounder jumping off the rope on you for 30 nights in a row, and you know. So it was always fun for me. When it wasn't fun, I would leave. And that's
is that
why
part of the different characters? Is that, because I thought it was really cool is you have so many different characters. Being able to change it up and get a new persona, does that keep it fresh and it's entertaining for you?
They would call me and say, hey, we got an idea. We want to do this. And I'd say, no, I don't want to do that. And they'd say, okay. And then a couple months later, they'd call me and say, hey, you want to do this? And I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that.
So
I know it sounds weird, but this is how it is.
Like, you had the freedom to decide if you
because
like
I didn't rely on the
you didn't
wrestling
have
money.
to do it.
I didn't have to do it.
That's awesome.
I didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So every character that we see is something that you personally wanted to do.
Then they called me, and I was a biker. So they said, we're going to do this knockoff of the UFC had just started. We're going to make this UFC type character. We're going to call him Kama, which is going to stand for kick any man's ass. He goes, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that, because I knew how to throw my hands and some stuff. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. He goes, we'll let you ride a Harley. And I was like, I'm in. So when we get there right now, this is before Vince had bought Titan and all the motorcycles and bought Undertaker a couple bikes, DOA bikes, and everybody bikes. And he didn't have bikes back then, so we had to rely on whatever they rented or what somebody, and people would bring Sportsters and big cruisers, and I'd be like, dude, I ain't riding that out there. So they got rid of the motorcycle. As soon as they got rid of the motorcycle, I'm like, Vince, I'm out of here. So he's like, well, I tell you what, let's do this program with The Undertaker. You melt his urn down, and he goes, we're gonna do the thing with Money Incorporated, and you can go. I'm like, cool. And then they called me back. Now here's the funny part. When they call me back now, it's been a couple years now, and they say, you know what, we want to do Papa Shango again, but this time we're not gonna make him so cartoonish and casting spells. We're gonna make him a voodoo guy, but he's gonna wrestle more. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, well, give me like 4 months, let me get in real good shape. And then I went, they made me a new outfit, everything. I show up to TV. And Jerry Lawler, who's an artist, I don't know if you guys know this, but Jerry Lawler's he's an artist. And so he does my makeup. And they do the makeup, and it's a lot meaner. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. And I take some pictures, and I say, hey, get the makeup off. Vince wants to talk to you. I'm like, cool, I like Vince. I can talk to Vince. Hey, what's going on, Vince? He goes, Charles, sit down. He calls me Charles. I can hear him right now, Charles. He calls me Charles. He goes, Charles, change of plans. I'm like, change of plans? He goes, we're going to put you in the Nation of Domination. You and Farouk are going to wrestle The Undertaker tonight, and you're going to go over in a handicap match. And you know what I said? I said, well, do I make the same amount, because it was a 3-year contract. I'm like, do I make the same amount of money? He goes, you make the same amount of money. I'm like, all right. It was like, all right, cool. And then I went to Ron Simmons, who I just met for the first time. I knew who he was. I watched him in college. Ron's just 2 or 3 years older than me. And so I went to Ron. He's like, man, I don't know what's going on, man. I'm the last one ever in. I'm the last one to kill. You know, and I'm like, oh, okay. So the next week, they call us into the office, right? Me and Ron. they're like, "Do you know who this Dwayne Johnson is?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know who he is." And then Ron's like, "Yeah, I know." I always talk like the people. I don't know why I do that. I just have this like this. And so he goes, "Well, listen." He goes, I tried to use, they brought him out as Rocky My Veer or something, and the people just didn't dig it at all, so they put him on the, I mean, he's under a really good contract too. So it's called putting you on the shelf until they repackage him. So they put him on the shelf, and then Vince's like, "I'm gonna put him in the Nation." He goes, "And I'm gonna get people to hate him." He goes, "And I'm telling you, once I get people to hate this kid and I turn him babyface, he will be the biggest thing wrestling ever saw." And I swear to God, that's what Vince McMahon said to me. So we're like, here around like, well, is he down with the program? Because he's like, well, so we get with The Rock, right? So at first, The Rock, we all wear those stupid little Muslim caps, right? He didn't want to wear a hat. He didn't want to wear the colors. He didn't want, so we were on and said, "You know what, we ain't doing it then, man. You either do this stuff or we ain't gonna do it." So we settled on him getting like 3 little stripes on his shorts. Red, black, and green, or whatever it was. He got the 3 little stripes, and so we said, "All right, cool." But he refused to cover his, he refused to put something on his head. But to this day, man, that's one of the good, people like him, Taker, just good people.
When you work these conventions, I mean, it's awesome to see the fans, but do you also look at it as getting to reunite with some of your past wrestlers that you have to work with?
I see them all the time.
Do you? That's great.
I do this. I really don't do this for the money. I
Oh,
do
yeah.
it because
That's what I mean.
my wife. This is what my wife says. She goes, "As long as I'm talking about myself, I can talk forever." And so it's kind of cool because I see somebody like you that's going to remember Papa Shango. When I was a kid, man, you scared the hell out of me, and man, I couldn't go to sleep. And then a younger guy's like, "Hey, I remember the Godfather," or go back and watch. And it's cool to see you tell your son, "Hey, man, I used to, when I was a kid, this guy here," and people start putting it together like, "Well, how old is this guy?"
That's awesome. Do you still watch wrestling yourself? I was curious if you would notice any sort of like change in the culture, like it's not what it used to be or anything different.
I have
Or things that
nothing
you missed.
against wrestling.
Sure.
I respect the business. I respect the boys. It's made me a lot of money. I've had a lot of good times, but I was never a wrestling fan.
Gotcha.
I watch.
Is it hard to watch yourself? Does it feel weird?
No, I like watching. But here's another, I don't watch TV, and I definitely don't watch the news. I watch hardly no TV whatsoever. I get home tomorrow at 12:30 to Vegas. I leave at 7 o'clock the next day to California. I get back Thursday. I leave Friday for someplace else. That's how my life
So you're
is
just
right now.
living life.
Yeah,
You're not
so
worrying about
I
anything
watch
external
no
stuff.
TV.
Yeah.
And if I go to my hotel tonight, if the TV's on, I'm not watching it. And so nothing against wrestling. I don't watch TV. I'm not going to watch 3 hours of wrestling to see 3 or 4 matches.
Sure.
So I don't really, where I do see the product is I'll do wrestling shows where I sign at the beginning of the show, and maybe at intermission I go out with some girls and talk some stuff and have some fun and then sign autographs. So I do get to see matches every now and then.
Awesome.
I do more conventions and signings and card shows, but every now and then I do the wrestling show.
That's cool. I wanted to open it up to some questions. Does anybody have a question for the Godfather?
Has AEW ever tried to reach out to you to bring you in? Since they
Chris Jericho called me one time, and he was asking what my deal was with I'm still under what's called a Legends contract with the WWE, and if you break that Legends contract, they'll break you. Vince is the coolest person in the world to me. Vince has put up with so much nonsense from me. I love that family. They put 5 kids through school. They bought me a couple houses. My family and myself is very thankful for that organization. But
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Favorite match and least favorite match?
don't have either. Oh, I do have a least favorite.
Least favorite?
Bob Backlund. I don't know if you guys know who Bob Backlund is, but he's old school wrestling. And I had to wrestle him as Papa Shango. And he wasn't going to put over the fact that the voodoo and everybody else you wrestle would be like a little leery of the voodoo. He would just act like you were a normal wrestler. So you're doing stuff and he's not putting it over. And we wrestled twice and they were the worst. Where Chief J. Strongbow was like, Charles, I don't know, he probably called me Papa. He's like, Papa, that has got to be the worst match I've ever seen. He goes, but they should be putting you two together because Bob wouldn't work with me. Another hard match of mine was Kamala. And it was hard because Kamala was so much better at his job than me that he would act like he's afraid of me. I'd go, he'd be like, woo! He'd be afraid every time I look at him because I was a voodoo man. And then he'd attack me and stuff. But those were hard matches for me, but not me. It was because I wasn't as accomplished as he was.
That's a great question. It's hard to pick a favorite.
I don't have a favorite.
I
I don't know how people, I think people are lying when they say that. How could you have a favorite if you've had 3,000 matches? There's matches you forgot.
Oh, absolutely. Especially
I think my best technical match I ever had was against Shawn Michaels. It was a King of the Ring. And you guys know what a Broadway is? A Broadway is when there's a time limit, you go the time limit. And it was like a 20-minute or 30-minute time limit. And I'm like, dude, I punch and kick. I don't do all this wrestling and all that. I was a punch and kick or beat you up. And so I listened to him. And I have to say that was probably, he called the whole match. He even called my heat where I'm supposed to come back. He called it. And it was probably the best match I've ever had. But that's because he was such a great worker.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know.
That's awesome. Anyone else?
All right.
Have you ever been in a match where you just got knocked out cold?
Brawl for all. No, just that. I've hit my head a few times because my wife was, RVD was in Sabu. We were on a panel like this, and they were talking about concussions, and RVD's like, well, I've had this one, I've got this one, and Sabu's saying, I got this one. And I'm like, dude, I never had a concussion in my life. And then my wife afterwards, she's like, baby, that's not true. I'm like, what? She goes, remember that time? And I'm like, oh yeah. She goes, remember that time? And I'm like, oh yeah. I guess I am. And she's like 5 or 6 times where I forgot because you had a concussion.
Absolutely. She's
So I had him too.
About it. Worrying about it.
It's wrestling, football, wrestling, man. And you don't tuck your head, and that mat is not as soft as you think it is.
Absolutely.
And your head, boom, it can easily happen. Tuck your chin. The biggest thing about wrestling, if you watch wrestlers, as soon as they go down, tuck that chin. As hard, don't be loosey-goosey, because your head, tuck that chin. Keep your arm, like if you're going through a table, don't get your arms out here, because if that table splinters, it's going to rip you open. So when you go through the table, you see guys go like this, because you don't want to get hurt, so you got it.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah.
People think that stuff's rigged and the cheers are rigged. No, it's not.
Yeah, that's gotta hurt. I don't know how you could possibly fake something like that.
It's better, if you rig the table, it would have a more chance of splintering, and that's how you get hurt. So you're better off just going through it the hard way. You know? The guys today now, when they give cheers, they put their hands up. That's probably because they're smart. Back in the day, we just took them, came in, boom. You know, you watch today, there's some where they take a chair shot without putting their hands up to catch the chair. That's probably because they're smarter than us.
I just had a final question. It's probably a silly question because you always seem to be portraying the Godfather, and you seem so happy when you're the Godfather.
I'm not portraying the Godfather. The
it's
Godfather
just like it's you.
me.
That's what I mean. Like out of all your characters, which is your favorite? I assume that's the favorite. Yeah.
Not even close.
Is there anything about? Did you enjoy kind of getting on that spookier character, putting on the makeup, or was it something you didn't like? Because that can be a pain.
What I didn't like about Papa Shango was the face paint.
Yeah.
And I mean, because they painted my nose, my lips, and then you'd be breathing in, all of a sudden you'd breathe in some of that paint, or you'd swallow some of that paint, and that smoke from that skull, it was this sulfur, it was non-toxic sulfur. So like after a month, you're like always coughing, you blow your nose, my eyes are always red because that black paint's getting in your eyes. That's what I didn't like about that.
I can see that.
I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And then The Godfather was all my wife's idea.
I love that. I did a little bit of research on that. And it had to be cool to be able to be surrounded by the women and not get in trouble because it's her idea, right?
I've been in topless
How
cups
lucky
all my
are
life.
you?
I mean, the rest of it was the girls were nothing like the topless life that I had.
I'm just saying all the guys had to be a little jealous because you could get away
I would
with
tell you,
it.
the guys, I will say this, that The Godfather was probably the favorite amongst the wrestlers.
I love it.
Because now, because I had the girls every night.
Oh, yeah.
You
I
never
like
know
the
that I had all
girls.
these girls. And it made the dressing room fun instead of just a bunch of stinky guys hanging around, made it fun back there, so it livened it up. The
Absolutely.
Godfather was it was good for us.
Just a fun character to watch.
I'll tell you this, with the modern day that we live in, I don't think you'll ever see another Godfather in my form.
I was thinking the same thing. It's nice you're able to do what you did when you
Yeah.
did, because those
You've
days
been
of
put in
winter.
jail now.
Oh, it's such a shame. But we're so happy to have
Yes.
you. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, I had a great time. I thank everybody, man, for watching all the years.
And he's going to be doing your Papa Shango photo op. It's going to be
Yes.
today at 2?
2 o'clock.
2
I'm
o'clock.
going to paint up
Gotta get that face
Papa
paint
Shango
on.
and take some pictures.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming.